Man, I love being a farmer. Look at that sunrise. Isn't that beautiful? Today's video, I'm really excited to share with you guys because it's a first for us. It's the first time we are trying out this crop roller on our summer cover crop mix. So in today's video, I'll show you what this crop roller is. I'll tell you what's in our summer cover crop mix, and I'll give you kind of the breakdown of the why, like why would we roll our summer cover crop mix. All right, well, let's get in the tractor. So we bought this crop roller from the Right Way company in 2018, used a few years on summer cover crops, and then we sold it because I wasn't using it enough. And then I came up with this idea for rolling summer cover crop mixes. Called the guy that bought it. He said that for what he was using it for, wasn't working all that great. So I went ahead and bought it back. So let's get started. Before we go any further, I want to give a quick disclaimer. This is the first time that we're rolling our summer cover crop mix, and so I'm by no means an expert on rolling summer cover crops. This is an idea I came up with earlier in the year, and I wanted to try out, and so I want to bring you guys along on this journey of rolling summer cover crops with us and take you along on my thought processes on why we're doing it. So I want you to know that going into it, and I hope you guys enjoy the journey that I'm going to take you on. The piece of equipment that we're pulling today is the Right Way Crush Right crop roller. Right Way is a company out of Canada, and in the United States, you can order these Crush Right crop rollers by contacting your local case dealer. So we bought ours a few years ago to roll cereal crops like cereal rye, wheat, beardless trid or triticale, oats, and barley. That's why most farmers buy crop rollers like these, because they want to roll a cereal crop ahead of planting crops like corn or soybeans. The reason that they roll those cover crops is because that let's say it's cereal rye. You roll down that cereal rye and it puts down a thick thatch covering your ground. And so that thick thatch is providing your ground with protection from the sunlight to protect your ground from pan evaporation, and then it's also trapping more of those rainwaters. When the rain falls, it's a less violent event for the soil because it's hitting that residue and that armor. And if you have like a major rain event where you get like an inch in 10 minutes or whatever, then you're not going to have as much compaction from the rain or whatever would be hitting your soil. And then also in areas where it's really wet, they want to use those root systems to dry out that ground, or to keep that soil drier from the moisture taken up by the cereal rye. So those are the reasons why you would want to roll a cover crop, or why most farmers roll their cover crops. So this equipment's pretty cool. It's got those 3 sections on it, and it folds really well. This is how it folds. You pull the pins on the tire, so now you can move it, and you pull forward and those tires move. As you pull forward and you fold out the wings, once it gets to a certain point, you stop, and then you back up. As you back up, those tires the front frame locks into place. So once you have that locked into place, then you can go back out and you can put those pins back in. You raise your tires up, and then you fold in that safety arm on the side. And that's how easy it is to fold it up, or to unfold it. This is how you fold it up. This particular crop roller is 42 feet long and weighs about 33,000 pounds. They have them in a myriad of sizes and widths for whatever you're going to need on your operation, but we picked this particular length because we felt like at the time the manufacturing, that was the largest crop roller that they sold. So that's why we chose that particular size. I like the way it's worked so far. My only knock on it would be the impressions it leaves with having the bar straight across there. I would kind of like to see a chevron pattern. I think the chevron pattern would leave less compaction and less of those divots. But other than that, I'm pretty pleased with the way it's worked on the cereal rye, and so far on the summer cover crop mix, it looks like it's doing a good job as well. You can travel at about 6 miles an hour with this particular crop roller, like that's the speed I'm picking for rolling this mix, and that's how fast we were rolling to roll cereal rye, so that's about 25 acres an hour. This mix is a summer cover crop mix. We planted it in early June. It has 10 pounds of Jimmy Red corn in it, 2 pounds of sunflower, 1 pound of buckwheat, 1 pound of sun hemp, and 1 pound of daikon radish. Typically, when I pick a summer cover crop mix, I want at least 8 species in the mix. So this is low for us, only having 5 species in it. The reason you want more species is because different plant species will share micronutrients with other plants. So the more species of plants that you have in a summer cover crop mix, or any cover crop mix for that matter, the better off that your individual plants are going to be, because they're going to be able to share micronutrients with one another, and they're going to be healthier in that system where there's more crops. The reason we picked this particular cover crop mix of only 5 species instead of having a larger mix is because I wanted to pick species that I believe the crop roller would kill. So going into it, I believed all of them would get killed by the crop roller except for the daikon radishes. Only the daikon radishes that had the bulb or tubule, whatever you call the white part of the radish, was sticking up out of the ground, that would get broken off and killed, and then some of them wouldn't. It turns out not all of the buckwheat, most of the buckwheat, but not all of the buckwheat is dying, and then I'd say we're about 50% survival rate, if not more, on the sun hemp. And so that was the reason why I picked this mix. To me, it's not that big of a deal because the majority of the mix is corn. All of the corn is dying, and you know, I'm pleased with that aspect of the mix so far. And that brings me to the first why. Why are you rolling these cover crops? Why not graze them? So we are not grazing this particular cover crop on this particular field because it's so far away from our home place. The best bang for your buck if you have cattle is getting to graze your cattle on these cover crops. And so we're not particularly in a situation where it's easy to graze this from our home operation, and so that's why we're not grazing this particular field. And we have one other field that's 80 acres. So this field's 320 acres. The other field that we rolled on Saturday, which is 2 days ago, that field was 80 acres. So we're doing these 2 fields as an experiment. So the next logical question I know that people are thinking is, why would you roll it instead of spraying it if you're not killing all those species? So I knew not all the daikon radishes would die, and then also there's weeds out here like kochia. I'm not seeing a lot of pigweeds, but pigweeds would be an issue. And then like Texas windmeal grass, there's a little bit of that in parts of this field. And I'm not sure that we're going to kill the devil's claw. So those are all weeds that we have out here that are going to be an issue when it comes to killing it. And I've got volunteer milo, so not all of those are going to die. So then the question becomes, why even roll it? Why waste the diesel to roll it if you know that you're probably going to have to spray it again? Great question. I've got two reasons for rolling this summer cover crop mix. One, as I'm rolling it, my theory is that if you take the big corn plant and you put that on the ground with the roller, and it's breaking that stem, but it's not breaking it completely apart where it's still intact, I believe that I'm going to have more residue staying in place when I get my wind events that happen every year of over 50 mile an hour. Like last December, we had one that for 6 hours, it was 100 plus miles an hour wind. It was devastating. So when we have these large wind events, I believe I'm going to be able to keep more of that residue in place by rolling this than if I would have left it standing, because I believe in that wind, those leaves would break off a lot easier, as opposed to if it's flat laying on the ground, it's got more protection from laying on the ground. So that's reason number one why we're rolling this particular mix. Reason number 2 for rolling this particular mix is I think it's so thick out here, and there's so many different levels of the canopy that it would be fairly difficult to try to spray the entire field and get a good kill. So I believe since the majority of what's out here is corn, and I know that corn is dying, that leaves a big area for the plants that are going to survive this to catch most of the chemical that we would use in a chemical application in terminating this cover crop. So we believe in no-till to keep those species alive underneath the soil, and so that's why we're utilizing this crop roller, and that's why we would be using a chemical application to terminate the things that survive. And that raises another question. Why would you grow a summer cover crop mix if you want to get rid of your fallow period? Why not grow wheat or corn and then drill wheat into it? That's a great question. The problem with that in western Kansas is people don't do that because that corn and that milo are coming off so late that you usually don't get a good stand. There's not a lot of moisture to plant into. The theory behind this is if we're terminating it in August, then we have more flexibility to catch a rain that will preserve that moisture than we would if we harvested corn or milo off this field. And the residue, when you harvest your wheat or milo, that breaks loose when you have those huge wind events that we have, that residue is more likely to blow away. So I'm hoping to preserve more residue by doing this and preserve more moisture, and that's why we're not drilling wheat behind corn or milo. So the other reason, and this is the main reason why we're rolling this cover crop mix, I want to try to keep wheat in our rotational systems to keep the diversity. A lot of my thought process in keep doing regenerative soil principles in western Kansas, where we only get 16 inches, is that it's tough to keep wheat in your rotation when you're doing soil health principles, because you really, for your wheat to be successful, you typically have to have a long fallow period ahead of wheat. In our area, wheat on wheat doesn't work very often. Wheat following corn or milo doesn't work very often. I haven't had a lot of success growing a spring cover crop mix like oats ahead of planting wheat, because those oats usually have a ton of weed pressure, and we fight weeds a lot. So that's where I came up with the idea of rolling a summer cover crop mix. Now I will say my friend Larry Purdy, who actually came and visited me on Saturday when we were rolling this cover crop, Larry and I talked about this when he came out to see what I was doing, because he's had fairly good success growing a spring cover crop mix and then terminating it and then planting wheat into it. So he's seen good results from doing that. He's been doing it for 5 years. So we're in the same county. I don't know why he's cracked the code and I haven't, but that's where the idea for me came up with this, is I wanted to be able to grow a cover crop ahead of planting wheat. And that leads me to answer yet another question. Why not just have a fallow period ahead of your wheat? Why not no-till all summer long and then planting your wheat? Well, a long fallow period kills your biology. So mycorrhizal fungus that is really beneficial to your soil and to your plants getting micronutrients, mycorrhizal fungus can't survive without living roots in the ground. So if you have a prolonged period where there isn't living roots in the ground, your mycorrhizal fungus population is going to die. If you plow up your ground, your mycorrhizal fungus colonies and your saprophytic funguses and other funguses are going to get killed from the tillage event. So you can, in theory, keep it alive by having a chemical fallow period, but then in lies the problem of 100-day temperatures and multiple days of 100-degree temperatures. If you don't have anything covering your ground, when it's 100 degrees out, it can get into excess of 130 degrees out in our area, and that heat is baking your soil and killing the microbes within your soil when you have those major heat events. And so that's why you want these roots in the ground and these plants growing, is because it's going to keep the biology alive during your long, hot summer months. So you put out these cover crops, and everybody tells me this, your cover crops are stealing all your moisture. 100% these cover crops are sucking moisture out of the ground. But think about this thick mass mat of mulch that I'm putting out on the ground from these cover crops. If I get a rain event here in August or September, then I'm set up way better than my neighbors who are tilling, because I got that mulch out on the ground, and that mulch is going to protect my ground and preserve that moisture longer. And if I get a heavy rain event, same thing with the mulch from the cereal rye, it's protecting my ground from getting compaction from those major rain events by having that mulch on the ground. And it's going to stay in the ground longer. It's going to have less evaporation. So that's the idea behind rolling the cover crop mix ahead of growing our wheat. So the last reasons of why we're doing this is because we want our system to be as regenerative as possible. So we want the armor on the soil. That's what the mulch is doing. We want a living root in the ground as long as possible. So going into drilling our wheat, this summer cover crop mix is really setting us up to do that, because we're going to have that termination process here in the middle of August, and within a month we're getting wheat back in. If we don't get moisture and it's too dry, then it gives us some flexibility. I have all this mulch growing on my ground. I don't have to worry about it blowing over the winter, and I can go back into it with corn if it doesn't rain. So it gives me flexibility. If I was sweeping my ground all summer long, there'd be no flexibility. I have to plant wheat, and then I have to, if it doesn't rain, I dust it in and hope and pray for rain. If it doesn't rain, my ground's just going to blow all summer long. So that's why we're moving to these regenerative practices, because I hate these major wind events that are taking our topsoil. These systems build topsoil, and these systems build the biology we need to have healthy crops. So that is the main reason why we're rolling this summer cover crop, is to build a healthy system and be able to keep wheat in the rotation. And again, this is the first time that we're doing this, so this is really a learning experience for us, and I'm sharing this learning experience with you. If you guys want to see how it goes for us rolling our summer cover crop mix and drilling wheat into it, that video is available right here. If you're not seeing that video right there right now, then we haven't made it yet. So if you want to see it and it's not there, hit subscribe, and we'll have it out here in a couple of weeks when we drill our wheat into it. And even if we don't drill wheat into it, we'll explain the reasons for why we're not drilling wheat and what the plan is. Hope you enjoyed today's video.